Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're excited to have our second session with Monadnock. The first part of this series for museum media was last year. And Alan from Monadnock and Steve and Claudia said, oh, we have another idea. Let's do this again. It was so much fun. And we dragged Tafeni into this. Who is also a long-standing AAAM member. This session is museum media new strategies. So I don't know much about what they're speaking about because I was not part of the planning committee for this. So you guys get a break of not having to hear me speak throughout the whole thing. I'm just gonna pass it on to Monadnock. Camille, next slide, please. And for those of you who are not familiar with us, I'm Vidette Coleman Robinson. I'm the executive director of the Association of African American Museums. AAAM is a nonprofit member organization established to support African and African American focused museums throughout the country and then also internationally. And everyone on this call would be happy to hear that as of today, we have 1,020 members. So we are growing like crazy. Since we received our Mellon funding back in 2018, our membership has increased by 193%. So thank you so much for spreading the word about AAAM, but also more importantly, thank you for being here with us as members. You are the backbone of this organization, and without you, there would be no me, and there would be no Camille, and the board would be very, very sad. Camille Vincent is our special projects intern. She is at Howard this year. She just started her first semester working on her PhD program. So Dr. Cherry, I'll be sending her up your way to do some case studies. I don't know what that looks like. I don't have any money to pay for that, but hopefully between the two of us, we can try to make that happen for her.
Okay, let's make something happen.
All right, Camille, next slide. All right, and then just some housekeeping things before I pass it on to our friends over at Monadnock. Please make sure to drop in the chat your name and your institution. Any questions that arise, please also make sure to place those in the chat. And then also just make sure that your phones are on mute or your computers are on mute throughout the duration of our presentation. Without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to our friends at Monadnock. Steve Bressler. Alan, are you speaking at all today? Well, please wave. Alan is the executive director of Monadnock, Claudia Levin, and then our dear friend Tafeni, who is a AAAM member. She does not work for Monadnock, but she can tell you all about her site and what she's been doing to work with Monadnock. Thank you so much.
So for those of you who don't know Monadnock, I'm Steve Bressler. I'm creative director and founder of Monadnock. And what we have been doing for over 40 years, I know I don't look that old. I know you're all puzzled about that. But what we've been doing is multimedia design and production specifically for museums, visitor centers, and historic sites. That is our specialty. And as over the last, I'll say about 10 years, it's become increasingly clear to us, given the role that media has come to play more and more in museums. It's getting more sophisticated. More museums are embracing more media. We realized, gosh, you know, the old model, we need to come up with some new strategies. So one of the new strategies I'm going to talk about today, and it's called master media planning. And really, it's a way of taking a look at a new or existing museum that's undergoing a major renovation or adding a new gallery. And it's a way at kind of looking how to make sure that we create the most meaningful and engaging multimedia experiences by making sure we have a good mix, okay? And the way to do that is, if you think about typical exhibit planning, which oftentimes includes media, this is like an area for specialists. So, you know, you don't go to a dentist to have, or I don't go to a regular dentist for a root canal, but you come to a media organization like us to really kind of take a focused look at what's possible for your entire facility. And what the traditional model is exhibit designer comes up with some design, issues an RFP and puts it out to bid. What we found in working on the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum, on the Truman Presidential Library, which just opened, then closed, and is about to reopen again because of COVID, and the Choctaw Cultural Center in Durant, Oklahoma, is that when we are in with the designer and the client team at the very beginning, with some type of, a specialist, we can bring a perspective to it and come up with possible solutions where it's not just you put media here, you put media there, but it's more like the ideas you come up with start to inform spaces, exhibit spaces, and exhibit spaces start to inform how you think about the media based upon content research and the available space. So that's the kind of alternate model. And we found it to be very effective. And I don't know how many of you have been to the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum. I'm sure not many have been to the Truman Presidential Library. And I'm sure even fewer have been to the Choctaw Cultural Center. But the best example, even more current, is what we have just gone through with Tafeni, who's the director of the Civil Rights Memorial Center in Montgomery. And I think I will leave it there and let Claudia talk a little bit more about content and process.
Actually, we're going to let Tafeni first talk about why we got involved with the Southern Poverty Law Center Civil Rights Memorial Center.
Hello, everyone. I'm really excited to be here to talk about the project that we started at the Civil Rights Memorial Center, which is a project of Southern Poverty Law Center. The memorial opened in 2005 after Southern Poverty Law Center moved its office headquarters and decided that they wanted to utilize the building that had the memorial out front that was designed by Maya Lin in 1989. And so primarily our museum, it's small, but it consisted of a room where we highlighted the martyrs from the memorial. There were plaques. There were a couple of interactives to begin with that really tried to connect the history of the civil rights movement in the South, specifically in Alabama, Mississippi, and surrounding states. And then we had a film, a narrated film, and then we had this interactive, which was formerly called the Wall of Tolerance. So I returned to Southern Poverty Law Center in 2019 to become the director for the Civil Rights Memorial Center. And when I started the job, one of the first things they said was, so we have to do some work. We have to take on this project of renovating the Civil Rights Memorial Center. And it was really important for us to maintain one, kind of the sanctity of the memorial, the reflective space. We wanted that first room to still be a place where when visitors came in, that they connected with the people and events of the memorial. And that wasn't always coming across, right? And so we really wanted to bring that room alive. We wanted to hear voices. We wanted to hear more about Maya Lin's inspiration in the memorial and why the martyrs that were selected. And we really, really wanted to connect to our community. We really wanted to connect not only thousands of people who visit the South because they're interested in civil rights, but we also wanted to engage with the local community who oftentimes doesn't have this history as much as we'd like or people perceive. And we also wanted to have a deeper call to action and a deeper understanding of how the past certainly connects to what's happening in our country today. The other thing that I do want to highlight is we do have an educational docent who primarily provides educational tours for groups. And so we wanted to say, if someone came in and they still wanted that kind of deeper connection without that criteria of having 10 or more. How can they also interact and have a deeper experience in the martyr room? And I think that's all I have to say about that. Claudia, the overall goal was to definitely give our visitors a different experience, but also to maintain kind of the sanctity and honoring those who lost their lives during the struggle. You're muted, Claudia.
Hello, Claudia.
She wasn't muted just a few minutes ago. So
Claudia, you're still muted. Well, while Claudia is trying to unmute herself, well, she's doing something, but she's still muted.
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, what happened was, unfortunately, when I'm in the mode, it won't let me use my cursor, so I couldn't unmute. Okay, sorry about that. So when we met Tafeni, the first thing actually that we did when we met Tafeni, we met her at the Civil Rights the Civil Rights Museum in Jackson, Mississippi. And we took her through and we showed her some of our work so she'd have a sense of who we were and what we did. And as she said, you know, that emotional connection is so important. And we were very proud of what we did there in Jackson and wanted to convey that to her, that we could do the same for her. And I think she went away feeling like, yeah, maybe we were the right people. So Steve and I went to the center a short time after that, and and Alan too, in fact, and the three of us, we walked through with Alicia Brooks, the former director, and Tafeni, and heard how they present the museum to their visitors, what their educator does, what they do, what they feel that each room should present. And so we take this very slow walk through, and you'll see lots of photographs, because when we did that, we also took tons of photographs and videos and made sure we really understood what they had and perhaps where it could go. And so we did that. And when we came away, I have to say, I think Alan and Steve and I immediately looked at each other after the first room, which they call the martyrs room, and said, wow, here are these martyrs, here are these people who sacrificed their lives for the movement. But hey, what was the movement? There was no context. There was no historical context. It's really easy, if you're living in this museum and breathing and doing it every day, to not even maybe recognize that you don't have anything for context for your visitor, especially if they're going on their own without a docent. So we said, you know, this room could really use an intro video. And that became one of our biggest, the biggest impressions that we had initially. And then as we walked through and learned that Tafeni was really interested in connecting the past and the present more coherently and more effectively, we felt, boy, there's still lots of work to do here. And we'll talk about this in a minute, but the orientation theater experience, which we were not initially signed on to do, we realized that's where it's all going to come together. That's where we're going to bring this past, the civil rights movement, the martyrs experience, and activism today. This is where it's all coming together. And so we started to pitch that idea to them as time went on. So that was kind of like the first tour, and we're going to actually walk you through this step by step to sort of give you a sense of that whole master planning process. But in addition, and Tafeni said this before, was that, you know, we wanted to make sure, in addition to having this historical context, the connection between past and present, that there was also within the museum a very strong, clear call to action. It's wonderful working for a progressive organization like the SPLC. We don't have to hold back. We can really tell people that we think they need to get involved and get engaged, and these are these are incredibly crucial matters in our society right now, and you have to be a part of them. Or, you know, we encourage them. We don't yell like I would yell at somebody, but we do encourage them very strongly, and hopefully inspire them more to the point. So that's my 2 cents, which was probably more than I needed. And let's move on. to,
So- Yeah,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
no, you go ahead. It's your turn.
So we're going to take a look at the plan view of the space, so you all can see what the challenge was. And there was one other challenge that we haven't mentioned, and that is there were, wherever possible, Tafeni asked us to kind of repurpose existing technologies. And that was primarily happened in the Martyr room, which is the red space. I guess you can't see my cursor, but the kind of tinted reddish space is the first room you actually come into. Claudia, can you highlight that?
As
Oh,
I
you
said,
can't use your cursor.
I can't use my cursor. Yes, sorry.
Okay. All right, well, that's why we have it color coded. So you can see that red area here. And I'm gonna, if you look, well, let's see, if you can't use your cursor, let's go to the next image then. So let me just go through the intro gallery is in pink. Then the next part of your walkthrough is the theater, which is in green, the central space. And as Claudia said, we realized quickly that really is the nexus of the experience there, where we not only connect the past to the present, but pivot towards the present, towards activism. And then you come out of the theater and you walk into the blue hallway. And that was about some contemporary martyrs. And what we did there, we took a look at what we could do there. And then we also have the final room, which is, I think, it was called the Wall of Tolerance. I think it's renamed now the Wall of Justice, and it may be changing again soon. So let's go back quickly to the first gallery and the first image, just so you can see each space, what it was. So that's the first gallery. This is before we came in. We were looking at this table here. What else could we do with this table? We were looking at the mural, which was something very important to Tafeni and to the center, not to affect that mural or affect that space as much, leave it as much as possible alone. So that's the intro gallery. You got the next plan view.
Oops, sorry. Hang on. Just froze up for some reason. Don't know why. Sorry.
Okay, well, this is just
Here we go.
another view of the wall. Now you've got ahead of yourself.
No, I'm sorry. This is what we have, Steve. You're going to
Yeah.
explain what we did with this wall.
So we looked at this gallery, we looked at this wall, and what we decided to do is gingerly ask Tafeni, can we just modify the wall a little bit? And I'll show you what we did, what we proposed. We looked at 3 areas on this wall to paint out.
For a projection, for that
Yeah,
intro,
I'm
for the
getting
intro
there.
to civil rights film.
I'm getting there. So
Okay.
these areas here, we ended up having painted out. And so we could projection map onto this photo mural and essentially make it come alive to help tell a 4-minute story that provides the context for the civil rights movement. So kids and younger people who know nothing about what happened in the 50s and 60s at least have a glimpse into that period through this film. And we were able to do that without putting a big screen in the space, either a roll down screen or not. And in its default mode, when the program isn't running, we project everything that we painted out in these red areas here back onto the mural, so you don't even know it's been painted out. And Claudia, you going to show a little example?
We had in Birmingham a more brutal police force, and what they were able to do was arouse the conscience of the nation in support of the demonstrators, because they brought out the fire hoses and the dogs and all of that.
So that just is a glimpse. It's a 4-minute program. We're not going to watch the whole program, but it just gives you an idea of how we were able to take a light touch in that room, yet tell what ends up being a very powerful story in 4 minutes, just a little over 4 minutes.
And Steve, can I just say something really quick about that?
Sure.
Just because the murals and images were really important for us to maintain. And one of the things that we had talked about, kind of during the initial walkthrough is how we could do that without our visitors trying to or having to guess or connect kind of the timeline of the memorial for that. So that did come across in the video projection. And it's really well done when people see it in person.
Yeah, you have to see it in person. You're all dealing with latency over the, the video doesn't play smoothly because of latency, but it's worth going to a center to see it if you all happen to be in the area, or make a special trip, actually. This next view, those windows that you're seeing in this next view, and that's Tafeni there. She's playing the role of visitor in this picture. Overlooks the Maya Lin Memorial. And those two interactives that you see there, which we inherited, were covering the martyrs, the civil rights martyrs, as Tafeni said, those who lost their lives in the 50s and 60s of the civil rights movement. And Claudia, you want to go to the next image?
Yeah,
So,
and Tafeni might want to explain what she was thinking about here.
and so this is the old program that featured, you could click on any of the martyrs and learn a little bit about that person and what happened to that person. And if you can see that out the window, you can't quite see the memorial, but the Maya Lin Memorial is right there. You're overlooking it. And so we said, hey, let's repurpose these interactives and let's cover the information that Tafeni wants to cover about Maya Lin and the memorial, but let's make it an interactive since it's overlooking the memorial. And maybe you can go to the next image. And so now you see, you can explore two aspects of the memorial, the design of it, and you can, click around on the design and see what the intent was of each aspect of the memorial. And then in the story end, you can explore the thoughts of Maya Lin herself via interviews of what she had in mind and what was motivating her, what inspired her to create this memorial in the shape and form that it's created. So it seemed like it made a lot more sense to tell that story, to let the visitors explore that while looking right out on the monitor. And then what we did is we took those martyrs and we moved them to that large interactive table that you'd probably have seen in the earlier image. You got the next image? So that's the old.
What doesn't Tafeni talk a little bit about this table and what their thoughts about it were?
Yeah, so the table is something that we wanted to maintain in the museum. However, we wanted the content to change. And it was important for us to dive deeper into the stories of the martyrs, removing what was on the overlooks to the tables. And one of the things that we had talked about was really having more content that shared their stories, who they were in their communities, what their relevance was to the movement, and then how they died, right? And what was the outcome of that case. To also, highlight a lot of the martyrs on the memorial were cold cases where their perpetrators, it was decades after their murder that anyone was held accountable, if anyone was held accountable. And we really wanted to pull out imagery of the martyrs as well as like parts of the community and allow the visitor to engage more if they so choose, but we all wanted the content there. Claudia, do you have a picture of the glass?
The glass.
The stained glass, the next
stained
picture.
glass.
That's what it became. That's what it was. That's where it became. Yeah.
Right. And also like what it was, again, chronicled what just significant events with a short blurb. And so the stained glass window, again, significant to the church being a place of community building and bringing a little color to that room.
A lot of color.
A lot of it brought a lot of color to the room, and it's still one of my favorite things. And when I'm in here in the afternoon when the sun's going down, it's beautiful to see that. It really is a solemn place without too much interactivity going on. Yeah.
And so now we'll show you how we approached it. You'll see these. It's not just the names of the martyr that come out of that bright spot on this screen. But when these names of the martyrs land, the other information that comes up is how they were killed. Because we are assuming that most, especially young people, and even people my age and, may not know all those martyrs by their pictures. But at least now the entree is, how is this person killed? And it's a little bit more intriguing and also horrifying to understand exactly right up front, this is how this person was killed. Sometimes, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, because it was all so seemingly arbitrary. Of course, it wasn't, because most of them were plotted. But, we have things murdered while driving, murdered while dancing in a dance hall. It was, as everyone here knows, it was just a horrific period. Not that it isn't now. So it's sort of trying to capture people's imagination by bringing them into a story, because we're always, of course, trying to craft stories in everything we do. And we'll show you some video of it right now. And you can see how the names come out from the center. And you learn.
Forced to jump off a bridge, if everybody can read that.
Yeah, forced to jump off a bridge. And it was about how the Klan wanted to go after him, particularly. This guy shot while driving home from work. He was a factory worker. And you can see also that many people can play at once, which is kind of
Can you
cool
freeze
too.
that? Can you freeze that for a second? Go back a bit.
Go back.
Yeah, just go back to the end of that.
Hang on.
So it, as Claudia mentioned, it is multi-user. And when you drill down, right there's good. Right there's good. When you drill down a little further, we split each of the story. Oops.
Sorry. You want to see the hands?
We split each of the stories up into 4 categories. If the close-up was better, actually, but into background, into how they were murdered, into the results. Was their murderer, their killer ever brought to justice? You can see that we brought into these 4 categories if you decide to drill down more. So you really are more in charge of your experience, and your understanding can be deeper of exactly what happened to this person.
And more emotional. Again, going back to the emotional sentiment that Tafeni talked about before, always trying to create some sort of emotional connection, because otherwise these people seem like somebody who was, 1,000 years ago. It doesn't matter, right? But somehow this makes them more real, more present in people's lives. At least that is the hope. We'll see as people start coming to the museum whether that's effective. But for an interactive, it is an unusual approach for sure.
Well, Claudia, I do think it's important, even in these stories, a lot of them do parallel with things that we're continuing to see today, right? And it is connecting the past to the present in ways where we all know, that what we're seeing in our country is nothing new, right? It is nothing new, but even when we talk about these martyrs, there has not been a time when an educational docent has not been able to point to something recent that's happening, right? I think about Corporal Roman Ducksworth, who was murdered by law enforcement, who perceived to be a freedom rider at the time, right? And his response to his father, if I had known that was your son, then I wouldn't have shot him. Again, this assumption that there has to be a deviation within the community. So it allows us also to have deeper conversations, especially with our younger audiences, deeper conversations about what's happening in this country today, and how we also get to talk about the people, which is so important. These were everyday, ordinary people. We won't see their names in history books, right? But this is the same that we're seeing today with George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and really talking about how it is the people in the community. These are their stories. These are lived narratives, but also thinking about the aftermath, right? Of the families who are left to carry the burden of continuing to defend their loved one who lost their lives just because of the color of their skin. So I think all of that comes out and connects with all of the interactives in the Martyr Room.
Yeah.
And then one last point that Tafeni spoke about earlier is a docent, an educator bringing either a school group or a tour group through. And so what we did is we gave them the ability to use the existing technology that we use to tell the story on the photo mural wall, and to be able to load whatever content they want on the back end of this, and have a mode where they can feature, if you can imagine a school group of 25 kids in that space, the educator can put up whatever information he or she wants to talk about, and the whole group can see it rather than just being words coming like I'm talking right now. You have a real picture. So there's an opportunity for a photograph, a quote, any additional information that the educator wants to add. And it was a way of reusing this the projector that we already had, the technology we already had in the space. And I'll back up just a second. You can move on to the theater, but this is all part of, these are all puzzle pieces to this master plan that we came up with on a higher level initially. And then as we dug down a little deeper, we started to see the potential of these different components to carry, as Claudia said, the emotional content.
Hey, Steve, I see a question in the chat that I can answer really quickly. It's like,
Sure.
have you gauged how much time visitors spend at the interactive table? In the past, visitors have spent anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes at the table. Where people spend most of their time is walking around the room, actually reading the plaques of the 40 martyrs. So people, and we have some other, so people spend most of their time there, but about 10 minutes at the interactive table, 10 to 15 minutes, and at the overlook, it was even a shorter period of time, which was why it was so important for us to redesign that, because there was so much content there. It was a narrated recording of all 40 martyrs, and the narrations were anywhere from 3 to 4 minutes long, and people would never spend the time there. So we wanted them, you know, to have a variety of ways to learn about the martyrs.
One other footnote, Tafeni, you guys are not open yet. So
Right.
we don't know
Well,
exactly how much.
Well, actually, we have been testing it, as internal staff has been this week going around. And I've been doing like mini tours with staff.
Okay, good to know. Okay.
Yeah, that is good to know. All right. So back to master plan, and there's
So-
that theater.
We're back to the theater. We're back to what we had always looked at as this real kind of pivot moment, and of the visitor experience. And if we go to the next image, in that theater was a standard screen and a nice production, kind of a documentary production, which might have been, Tafeni, 18 minutes long. I forget.
It was 20 minutes.
Right.
Total 20.
And we looked at this and we said, no, it needs to be a bigger experience, really hit people in the gut. And part of that is in the storytelling, as Claudia mentioned before. Part of that is in the media form, how we can really get to people. And so here's what we came up with. And there's a series of these screens. It's the same theater. And if you consider that the original screen might have been a little bit bigger than the when do we want it screen, you can see how much bigger this really kind of immerses you in the topic. The form also allows us to juxtapose past to present. It allows us to kind of, in a very kind of basic conceptual way, echo protest posters, marches, etc. And we're actually projecting onto scrim here. And behind that scrim are 60 individual small lights that represent the martyrs that come into play at different points during the program. And Claudia is going to play just a sampling of the program, so you see like 25 seconds of how we connect past to the present in one place, and then we have a few stills to show you of different modes of the theater.
Voter suppression and preventing communities of color from voting isn't new. It's really about maintaining the current power structure. I think it's a way of preventing, real progressive social change that could improve everyone's lives, right? That's something we learned from the civil rights movement.
So when we started to pitch this idea of an orientation theater using 9 screens and being much more immersive, what we said to Tafeni is, yes, as Steve mentioned, we could show that those past archival images and show almost the same scene today, whether it's the kid with the vote on his face and the kids today doing the same thing. So the film looks at all these, the legacy, literally the legacy of the civil rights movement on activism today, looking at issues like voter suppression, education, police brutality. We do a lot with police brutality. Obviously, you saw this scene of Charlottesville, of white supremacy in its most hideous form, institutional racism. We talk about all these issues, and they all have a back and forth conversation, almost dialogue with the past. The other really fun thing about this program is that we use so many young people. This young woman down
Interviews you're talking about now. You've
interviews.
interviewed.
Yeah, like in this screen, you can see the young woman on the bottom. She was like 15 when she started to get active, and she's big into voter rights and works with Black Voters Matter. And it was just like so thrilling to feel the energy, and I think that it comes across on these screens of these young people who are so hopeful, so idealistic, so hardworking, even though they understand that it may not even happen in their lifetimes, but they're really working hard for the cause. And we hope that this inspires our audience to also become a part of this march that started well before the civil rights movement, of course, but in this case, and I can see Tafeni nodding, ready to say something.
Yeah, I was, adding to all of what you said, Claudia. What was in this film previously was like this narrated black and white version, again, that just went into some of the stories of the martyrs, but it was very, very much focused on the martyrs. And one of the things that we wanted to do was to actually show ways in which the history of the movement evolves into today, and also to make it really relatable. We have so many visitors who would watch the previous film, which is very moving. Faces in the Water is very moving, but oftentimes we would have deeper conversations about, what's next, right? And so we wanted to give the visitor that experience in the theater. And we also wanted to provide conversations that they could have with each other after they leave the museum, because they'll go back into community. So it was really important for us to highlight a number of activists in community, specifically work that we're doing in the Deep South, also work that is happening on a national level. We really wanted to tie that in so that it aligns with the mission, vision, and values of Southern Poverty Law Center and its fight for racial justice in the Deep South. And so one of the things, as a native Alabamian, I really love seeing the voices of people from the South in this film, Apathy is Not an Option, and also just seeing the work that is happening across the nation, whether it's in the South, in the North, in the West, but just seeing the work happening in communities is really the thing that we really wanted to pull out in this film.
Right.
And just a footnote, that Claudia interviewed many activists from across the country, a lot in the South, and they tell the story. There is no narration.
Right. And again, really a real strong push for grassroots organizing, and getting involved at whatever level you feel you can do. I mean, again, that was the message as well. So you leave this wonderful show pretty inspired and fired up. Steve, you wanted to talk about the lights a little bit here in the last image?
Yeah, these are the memorial lights. We bring them on in the very, very beginning of the show, which we can't show you right now because of time. We bring each light on with a vignetted image of one of the civil rights martyrs from the 50s and 60s. And then we slam into the beginning of the program, which is about George Floyd. So we use these lights probably 4 times, and it just really adds a whole nother dimension to the experience in our effort to inspire visitors to do something.
Right. And I'm just going to point out, Stephen, Tafeni, we only have a few more minutes, so we'll go through activists, I think, pretty quickly and get into the final room. So coming out of here, it's getting to be the call to action and specific ideas. So we're now in the hallway that's blue. And let's see what we've got here. This is what it looked like before. And this, is starting to be what it looks like now with these 4 monitors. And this is an interactive, Tafeni wanted to have a touch screen interactive going on. So this is a really striking, sorry, I'm gonna get up there and just hold the image in a sec. And this was their idea, to highlight smaller organizations and community groups that are working to make a difference, to help people understand that they too can get involved. Again, just an evolution of that idea that we were talking about. So, for example, we have, I guess it's in the next screen. So you can see we have like Black Voters Matter, this orange one, we can end gun violence. It's a group in Chicago. Some kids started after their friend was murdered. And then we have, this is just one screen where it's not the attract screen, which is what you were looking at, but Rise for, Rise St. James. And this is a Black community in Louisiana that's fighting to keep a chemical plant, a Formosa Plastics chemical plant building in their community. And because they are already in what's known as Chemical Alley. And so you sort of, I wish I could use my cursor here, but you pop through these different placards here, the blue one, environmental activism, the orange one, and each one builds on the story a little. And if you tap on environmental activism or racial justice, you see other stories that connect to this. So we try to make these connections between racial justice, environmental justice, reproductive justice, criminal justice reform, all these things, homelessness, and advocating for the poor and not having the police. And again, a lot of these organizations that we highlight are run by kids. And, we do like the Sunrise Movement. Everybody's familiar with them within, environmental stuff. And again, also we're expanding the topic. So it's not just racial justice, although many, many of them do have intersections with racial justice.
Right.
Yeah.
It is that is with the last word that Claudia just used is another important thing that SPLC wanted us to do is at least show intersectionality between issues, and this allows you to become aware of that intersectionality.
Right.
Yeah, well, Steve just took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to
Sorry.
say, no, that's okay. And also, again, it's oftentimes the question that many people have is like, what can I do? What next? And this also provides an opportunity, and they don't necessarily have to be activists or advocates out organizing and marching, or, they may not be into, working with the legislature and policy making, but this allows them an opportunity to find ways that are meaningful for them. And again, of the premise that everybody can do something, and it doesn't always have to be grand, but taking small steps in meaningful ways as we work to unify our country around the issue of race. And again, how a lot of this overlaps. And because of the work that we do at Southern Poverty Law Center, when we're in communities, we learn that there are other issues plaguing the community. People are concerned about their environment, specifically looking at the disparities in predominantly Black rural communities in the Deep South, right? People are concerned about gun violence. They're concerned about reproductive rights. They're concerned about LGBTQIA, plus they're concerned about all of those things and the safety and well-being of those that they love. And so we wanted to just provide an array of resources for them. And then the other thing we haven't talked about, and I'll say this really quickly, is that we also have internally, as issues come up or new organizations, or if we wanted to, we're able to do that to update this board so that it doesn't stay, kind of the same. So I wanted to add that.
Thank you for adding that. And why don't you go ahead and keep taking us into the final gallery here?
Yeah. So the final gallery is formally, it's purple. It's the purple room.
Right.
The final gallery is formally the Wall of Tolerance, and we've renamed it to the Wall of Justice, a place of reflection. And what in this room, we also have a poem that was compiled and narrated by Kwame Alexander. It's called The Civil Community. An excerpt of it was read on NPR after the George Floyd verdict. And so we commissioned Kwame, and we sought submissions from people across the country, and we had over 800 submissions, and he took their lines, their thoughts, their ideas, and created this beautiful poem, A Civil Community. And in this space, people reflect, and when they add their name to the wall, they're actually adding their name as a commitment in this work towards social justice.
Right.
So if you look at, this wall, this is how the wall was when we, the wall to your left, when we first came on the project, and this is where we decided to put the community poem that Tafeni's talking about. We'll show you the next image, shows you it on the wall. It's a large portrait-oriented monitor, and it allows you to see, listen to the poem, and also to see who around the country contributed to this poem. And truly, this is like a small step that people have taken to submit, to take the time to write lines of poetry, send them on to Kwame. He and his team kind of distilled them. He added some, what we'll call poetic lines and glue to it. And we'll show you an excerpt of how this works now for the visitor.
Remember the Middle Passage. Remember the imperfect laws. Remember Selma, the churches bombed, the fire burning our souls, the strange fruit swinging above a faulted constitution, the bodies and souls left to harden, the back of the bus, the walk of 1,000,000 miles just to get to one place. This is for the faithful and the fearless.
It's a very powerful poem. I think we've all feel that way. And we're just sharing a glimpse of it here, but it is like one more extension of how people can get involved in this. This is a good example. Any other thoughts about the process that Tafeni, you or Claudia want to throw in there?
As we're seeing the poem, I also want to point out that we were talking about the small and big ways you can get involved. So, if you can write, if you can paint, if you can seal an envelope, but also artistry of all forms, because of course that's been a big part too of today's movement. There's dance, there's music. There's so much art out there, all that kind of thing. So everything is a celebration. This seems like such a lovely way to end people's experience, I think. So we're all very pleased with this ending moment. So that's pretty much it. I think Steve, just a quick summary.
Yeah, quick. So again, going back to the beginning, we really kind of worked hard with Tafeni to understand the goals and interpretive objectives of the center. And we tried to kind of come up with puzzle pieces of multimedia that built on each other and intersected with each other, so that by the end of your visit here, you will go, wow, you feel, I won't claim you feel transformed, but I will say you should be moved. Most visitors will be moved. And I think that the challenge for us was, how do we create these multimedia experiences that people don't see in their everyday life, to really engage them, to really have high impact on them, and to really be meaningful experiences, and to try to move beyond the rectangle on walls, the media, the standard media forms. And I think we accomplished this, and how well visitors will enjoy it. I think once they open, which is, Tafeni, maybe you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, so we reopened January 13th, 2022. I'm really, really excited. Our doors have been closed since we closed down for the pandemic in March. But I also wanted to just say in closing really quickly how this was really, if I can just be fully transparent, this was really a scary thing for me, right? And thinking about kind of traditional museums and the setup and the structure and what we envision or think of as exhibits, and then doing something with the multimedia layer. I was really just like, oh, please let this work. And I was losing sleep at night. But I am so glad I did it. And working with Monadnock, I feel like they held my hand the entire way. And I think they felt some of the reservation and angst from me sometimes, but really reassuring me and having frequent meetings, brainstorming sessions internally, not only with me, but with our creative department. And I would say, like, if you're thinking about this, definitely bringing people in for kind of these brainstorming sessions and really thinking things through, thinking about what you have, and again, surveying your visitors if you can do that. But I just can't say enough about working with this team. It's actually been amazing.
Thank you.
It was
We've been really
amazing
fortunate.
working with you too.
Yes,
We feel
yes.
very fortunate, as you know. It was
Yes.
an extraordinary project to work on, and we were all thrilled to be part of it.
Absolutely. We really benefited from your consistent and strong vision throughout the whole process, Tafeni. So thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you.
Well, Tafeni, Steve was taking words out of your mouth, so that just shows you how in sync you are with the Monadnock team. I know several times when I'm speaking to Alan about things, he's finishing my sentence like we're some type of twin that I had no clue existed. And he's from Pennsylvania, right?
Delaware, but get close.
I mean, close enough. I'll take it. I'll take it. But I thank you guys so much for sharing what you do with our museums. I know several of us were in Jackson, and what you did at the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum was absolutely breathtaking. I know I bumped into Dr. Cherry a few times, and we were like, what is this space? It was just absolutely phenomenal and breathtaking. And Tafeni, I don't know when we'll get to Alabama. I know we've been to Birmingham several times over, and I don't think we can go to Birmingham anymore, but I feel like Montgomery is okay. So go ahead.
I feel like Montgomery is okay. And look, you have me and you have Brian Stevenson. We'll take care of you.
Yes. And now isn't Joy Kennard not too far from you at Tuskegee?
Yep, at Tuskegee. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I feel like we have just put your application in, honey, so we can have a great conference over in Montgomery. But I thank everyone for joining today. Are there any questions? I think we have like 2 minutes to open the floor for questions.
And if there aren't any questions, do feel free to email us any questions or thoughts you may have after this session. We'll be happy to respond.
Do you want to put your emails in the chat so we can?
I'll do that right now.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank
Okay.
you, Alan. No questions? Well, I did hear several items where you guys can hire Dr. Carter to do some voiceovers in your in the audio that you have going on over there. But be on the lookout, Brian, because I'm sure I'll be tapping you on the shoulder for some podcasts. I don't even know what we're going to do. We're just going to make up something. You know what? You would be perfect for the Calm app. There you go.
I'd love to try that.
Over there. Yes, I just over there. I'll go ahead and work on that. But thank you all so much for coming out. I'm so thrilled to hear about what our members are doing. Tafeni, I'm so happy and so thrilled that you're happy with this marriage that you entered into with Monadnock.
And she's going to have a real marriage soon.
Yes. And then when is the wedding?
June 18th.
All right.
Of next year?
Of next year.
Bless your heart.
I know.
For the pandemic. Are you
I
just,
know.
so
It's
wait, you're
super
planning a
small.
museum and a wedding at the same time?
Well, the initial date was April, and I just had to say, yeah, we can't do it in April. I've got to open a museum.
Yeah, yeah.
Priorities.
Priorities.
Priorities. Well, thank you all. And thank you for this panel. This has been so exhilarating.
Cadet,
Yes.
I did have one question. Where do you want us to send information about member activities?
Oh, info at Black Museums is the place to send all of the stuff that you're doing at your museums. Connie is a pro. Connie Dyson from the National Civil Rights Museum, who does not have her camera on, but she is a pro with sending us all the stuff that the National Civil Rights Museum is doing. So yes, send it to info, send it to info at Black Museums. It works so phenomenally well if you add an image to your email, because that's what captures everybody's attention on the website. If it's text, I mean, we're happy to post text, but if you have a wonderful image, well, I mean, you're an artist. Make up something, Dr. Cherry. I feel like
I just needed to know where. I got it.
Well, I gave you more information than you need. I mean, I'm working on my PhD, so I'm doing all of the dissertations and disclaimers all over the place. But thank you all. If there's no other questions, this recording will be available within the next, probably by 6 o'clock, you'll receive an email. And then on Monday, it will also go out for everyone who's available and wants to watch it again. And then also feel free to bug Claudia, Steve, and Alan, because that's what they're there for. They would love
Please do.
I bug them.
Yes. Yes, and enter into whatever marriage, elope, do whatever you want to do. They would love to hear from you all. So bye, have a wonderful weekend. We love you.
Vedette, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
No problem.
Bye,
You know,
everyone.
I love you guys. I'm not coming up there anytime soon, but send me pictures of the wonderful foliage up there before it just starts dropping on the ground and we can't see it anymore. Is
It's
it already gone?
It's gone.
Yeah.
It's November. It's November.
So thank you for being late on that, but you were working on a project.
I'll see if I have a picture.
Likewise.
Thank you. I appreciate
All right.
it. Bye, guys.
Thank you,
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Happy
Thanks,
holidays.
Tafeni.
Everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.